All right, folks, Yishai Fleisher here. I'm joined by my good friend, Jake Bennett, Israel advocate. Shalom, Jake.
Shalom, Yishai. Happy to be with you.
All right, what we're going to do in the next segment is we're going to take the trash out because we're the garbage men. We're going to watch some media piece and we're going to analyze it for its anti-Semitism, anti-Israelism, and believe me, there's a lot of garbage out there. Now, today we have a special piece from Dr. Annelle Sheline, who went on the Hill TV in the advent of the Trump Gaza plan. And she did what she did, which is be a Hamas apologist and an anti-Israel blood libeler. And she went out there and said her thing to try to really besmirch Israel, just like the Hamas folks that she apologizes for. She's a delegitimizer and an Israel shrinker. Let's take a look at what she says there on the Hill.
This kind of plan is discussed. And you're right, it comes up quite frequently. Why can't they go somewhere else? Egypt and Jordan tend to be the most commonly cited places. But isn't the purpose of that really to absorb Palestinians into neighbouring countries to the point where any sense of a discrete Palestinian people or Palestinian nation in the general sense ceases to exist? And we know, for example, people like Mike Huckabee, who is apparently going to be President Trump's ambassador to Israel, has previously said that there isn't such a thing, in his opinion, as a Palestinian. So isn't that part of this whole picture?
All right, Jake. So we see a framing right from the get-go of how the show begins. And, with that strong Irish accent or Scottish, I think it's Irish. There's a sense right from the get-go that Israel's this, bad guy trying to erase Palestinianism instead of the reality that Palestinianism has always tried to replace and displace and erase Israel and Israelis. That's number one. And number two is that indeed Palestinian identity is a relatively new identity. And indeed, most of the Arabs that are so-called Palestinians today are from those other countries. They are from Egypt and Syria and Jordan and Iraq and other places. They did come in the last 100 years because of migration to Israel, because of Zionism, because there was actually job opportunities there. So what do you think about the framing and the kind of accusation in there that Israel is the eraser of Palestinianism and not the other way around?
I think you hit the nail on the head in every point that you just made. And it is very important to understand Palestinian identity when you're talking about this conflict, because it is an identity that, as you said, is centered on the destruction of Israel and the replacement and erasure of Israel. And yes, over 60% of the people who identify as Palestinians today did come after the beginning of the Zionist revival in the 1880s. So when their very identity is based on saying that the Jews aren't the real Jews, we're the Canaanites. Arafat's told this story, in his lifetime, many ways and many different ways. We derive from the Canaanites. We derive from the Philistines. We derive from the original Jews. Everything's about national identity theft, erasure of Jewish history, claiming as Palestinian national heritage sites every Jewish biblical heritage site, from the Golden Dome of the Rock, which is built on the site of the Jewish first and second temple, on the Temple Mount that was built in the time of King Solomon and expanded in the time of King Herod, to the what they call the Ibrahimi Mosque, which is the family tomb of the founding family of the Jewish people, the patriarchs and matriarchs. You have a structure built by King Herod over a cave that's been our family tomb for 3,800 years. And they put a minaret on two opposing corners and said, this is a Palestinian heritage site.
That's right.
This is cultural appropriation by what? By who? By colonizers. You got a people whose language is Arabic, whose culture is Arabic, whose ethnicity is mostly Arabic and also Egyptian, which was also colonized by Egypt. So you got a people who are colonizers at the core, stealing the identity of the people whose land they took and claiming to be legitimate, trying to destroy Israel. So
cultural appropriation.
Again,
cultural appropriation is their modus operandi, the way that they work, and they really swallow up cultures and then call these things their own. You're absolutely right about that. We didn't even hear from Dr. Sheline herself, so let's keep going and hear how she answers that very leading question.
That you're right. That is certainly the the agenda of many of those pushing for this.
Wait 1 second. There is an element that I want to say is true. For people like yourself and myself, Jake, there is an element of truth in that accusation. I don't want to see a Palestine on our land. I don't want to see a different group of people take control of my land. I don't want to see the erasure and replacer of the Jewish people's ancestral rights and our heritage and our homeland. I don't want to see that. So I would like to see jihadis indeed exit our land and leave and go away. But I would like to see decent pro-Israel Arabs who identify with Israel, who appreciate Israel. I want to see them stay and live a happy and healthy and upwardly mobile life. But that accusation that Israel wants to get rid of a alternative narrative that's trying to erase it, well, yeah, that is true. I do agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll add on to that, Yishai. I don't want to see any country or any foreign power taking over any inch of Israel. Israel should have the pride and dignity to rule its own land, period. But it's even much, much worse when they talk about people with a Palestinian identity. And the locals in Israel differentiate themselves. The Arabs of Israel, they're ones who reject that Palestinian identity because they understand that it is a jihadist Nazi ideology that is intent on war against Israel, the Jewish people, and Judaism. And so there's a difference between the Arabs who would live at peace next to you and the ones who call themselves Palestinians, who are declaring themselves to be at war with you. And I'll add one more point, if we can, which is they talk about erasure and ethnic cleansing. And none of these people on this show complained one whit in 2005 when Israel took the steps to ethnically cleanse 10,000 Jews from Gush Katif, from the Gaza Strip. None of them complained and said there was something wrong with that, because while Israel lives as a Jewish and Arab state, as a Jewish state with democracy, the state that the Palestinians are demanding is Judenrein, is free of Jews, and they can't be there. And these people are fine with that. So the hypocrisy and lack of any moral baseline is clear when you see the double standard that they hold.
Well, I wouldn't even call it hypocrisy. They have a goal. Their goal is to destroy Israel, and they'll use whatever
that they claim to be coming from a moral place against any ethnic cleansing or removing of people. But they were fine with removing all the Jews, and they want to even remove the Jews from your town, from everywhere in Judea and Samaria and Eastern Jerusalem and the old city of Jerusalem.
Let's keep going. Here's Dr. Sheline.
Palestinian people do not exist, or that they could somehow be erased by simply dispersing them among other countries. But this is what Israel tried to do, especially after 1967, when Israel seized the West Bank and all of the Sinai, ultimately when Egypt and Israel signed their peace treaty in 1979. Israel returned the Sinai to Egypt. But the point was that Israel has displaced massive numbers of Palestinians before in hopes that perhaps this goal of national sovereignty for Palestinians would fade over time. And instead, it has only grown stronger, especially in the context of the horrors of what Israel has wreaked upon the civilian population of Gaza. This is a much more salient issue around the world, not only for the so-called Arab street, where this was seen as perhaps having grown less salient in recent decades. Now it is very much at the forefront, but even among American young people across Europe, across the global population, the cause of Palestinian sovereignty has achieved much greater prominence as a result of what Israel has done to Gaza.
All right, so let's talk about some of the points that she's made here. The first one, which we have to deflate here at the Garbage Men, is the kind of genocide accusation. Her last point is that Israel has done these horrors against the so-called Palestinian people. And we know that Israel has fought very mightily against the jihad, but has tried very hard, even to its own detriment and to endangering its own soldiers, to keep collateral damage and civilian death to a minimum. And in fact, studies have shown that Israel's war efforts are some of the most safe, shall we say, for civilians. And really, who's been killed in this conflict is either the militant terrorists themselves or their nearby associates. And that is it's a 1-to-1 ratio of civilian deaths to combatant deaths. and that's considered actually a very low ratio indeed. And
it's 3 times better than America experienced in Afghanistan and Iraq, where it was 3-to-1 civilians to militants. And this is in a case where Hamas is implanting their armed forces in mosques, schools, all UN run, by the way, to the chagrin of this young lady. Schools, mosques, hospitals, and offices. So when you have these kinds of results, it's absurd. And she talks about 1967. In 67, Israel wanted to avoid accusations of any population movement. They welcomed people back in after the fighting ended, back into Judea and Samaria.
Well, there's been a series of mistakes that Israel has made. And it's funny, her accusation is that Israel has tried to undermine Palestinian nationalism. I only wish it was so. I only wish it was so, because in fact, what Israel has done in the 90s was the Oslo process, which basically brought terrorists back to Israel, Yasser Arafat, and created a Palestinian Authority to rule over parts of Judea and Samaria and Gaza. And that Palestinian Authority was actually one of the main harbingers of Palestinian identity and nationalism, and that was one of the greatest mistakes that Israel ever did. But ironically, she does not say that. She says the opposite. She says Israel has done everything to undermine Palestinian nationalism. If it would only be so, if it would only be so. I wish it was like that.
Yeah, halavai. Palestinian nationalism needs to be understood for what it is and not for what this woman is pretending it is. Palestinian nationalism's goal is not sovereignty, because they could have had that, as we know, many times over. The goal of Palestinian
it's not
nationalism,
sovereignty, nor is it the attainment of rights.
Absolutely
nor is it
correct.
Coexistence.
Right.
It's none of those things.
It is the destruction of the state of Israel. And we see it in every home in Gaza, and we've seen it every day from the Palestinian Authority for 30 years. When they show in their offices their map of Palestine, it's all of Israel. And any area that they run.
Jake, let me pause you for a second.
You've got one.
Go to a solar screen. Here is something seized from an Arab home in Gaza, and it is the whole land of Israel, and it's the Al-Aqsa flood. There's a Hamas fighter. There's Jerusalem, so-called Al-Quds, and the Temple Mount. And here it is, an effort to so-called liberate, i.e. destroy Israel, and to get the whole thing, not a two-state solution, but the destruction of Israel. So there you go. You asked, and this is directly from Gaza, from a home in Gaza.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen a number of these and seen them from friends doing their Miluim reserve duty. And when they talk about rights, it has to be called out for our audience, because we're taking out the trash here. Let them know that when it comes to rights in the land of within the Green Line, the Arabs of Israel have all the rights that Jews wished we had in our 2,000 years of dispersion. They have full equality.
Including in Arab countries.
Including in Arab countries, right. And the rights in the places that they're so-called liberating for Palestinian sovereignty, we have a preview of what they want for all the land of Israel. No Jews allowed, death penalty for Arabs who sell land to Jews.
Right.
No Jews in at all, period. So when
and there's one more point. And there's one more point, which is this jihad does not want liberty and life and freedom of and property for their own people either. It wants to subdue their own people. It wants to make their children jihadists. It wants to steal their money and be corrupt. I mean, this thing is an oppressive regime. Right, exactly.
The corruption, the honor killings. I mean, we've seen videos of sons, brothers, husbands killing their wives in the streets in Arab communities there.
Honor killings. Why are you talking about honor killings? What about just folks that are anti-Hamas in Gaza right now? They're being mutilized. They're being shot, and we have videos of that. But finally,
because in the Palestinian parlance, sorry I interrupted.
Go ahead.
Coexistence, which we laud, they call collaboration. Anyone who will have a dinner with a Jew is a collaborator and must be killed, because their war is against the Jews, period. So this woman,
but there is something that she said though there, which is true, and it's very powerful. And she smartly, and she's a smart lady, latched onto that. She said the consciousness of the liberation of Palestine / destruction of Israel has grown in popularity, and Hamas and their helpers everywhere from the news media to the previous American administration indeed helped create a narrative of liberation and fighting against the colonizing, occupying, apartheid white man. And it is true, together with TikTok and together with other venues and media, really made it more popular. And that's why I do think that what we saw with the Trump moment in Washington, D.C., with Prime Minister Netanyahu and then a whole cabinet of pro-Israel secretaries, you saw that there was a turn of the wheel of what is cool. And I suspect, indeed, that there will be much more of a sense that Israel is cool, Israeli strength is cool, and jihad is bad. But when you have a whole world, on a train led by American administration, which is anti-Israel, then she's right. Then young people are going to be like, yeah, let's destroy this Israel, and let's lock hands with the jihad, because that's what's cool on this campus, because this campus is flooded with jihadis. And if I'm not a friend with the jihadi, I'm never going to even get into the library. Right. And so I hope that this is a moment of pushback. But her point is not to be, you can't just flick it off. It's a real point, which is her and Hamas and the Hamas apologists like her are on the march and of popularity and of cool. And that's something that Israel should pay attention to, and pro-Israel people are along the way as well.
I think one of the challenges, Yishai, that we face is there's a human psychology that loves the status quo. And even if that status quo is a stalemate war that's gone on for 100 years. And so we saw under the Biden administration, the administration that she resigned from because they weren't hard enough on Israel, a demand after this brutal attack and atrocities on October 7th to return to the 100-year stalemate and status quo and keep Hamas in place and bring in the Palestinian Authority, even though the Palestinian Authority is just another face of the jihad against Israel and has the same outlook and final goals, even if they're less religious in their daily lives. And that's the main differentiator. You have two jihadist mafia families, both striving to conquer and dispel.
It's actually, as I've said in a different video that I made, it's a flip side of the same coin. It's part of the same coin. One faces the West and has a moderate face and wears suits and ties. One faces the East, but they work together and they call for the destruction of Israel. The PA is the funder of the Hamas murderers. They pay their salaries.
Yes, absolutely.
So
they allocated millions of dollars to the murders of October 7th. And more than that, they've also funded the indoctrination and radicalization of the youth that Hamas was raising. They provided the textbooks. They wrote the textbooks. And then UN money through UNRWA was paying for the distribution of these textbooks, updated every year to radicalize towards jihad and warfare.
All right, Jake, let's get back to The Hill television. I think the show is called Rising. And here we continue with the discussion by Dr. Annelle Sheline.
I take all that, I understand all that, and I'm sympathetic to it. How would you respond to the counter argument, or I guess the more pro-Israel side of things, saying, okay, well, said all that all may be true, but now we have to live in the here and now, and the reality is that as of today, even if it's morally justified or it would have been preferable in the past, giving statehood to the people, to the Palestinians now, would result in Hamas having a terrorist organization, being the legitimate government of this region, and given their pledge to continue to attack Israel in the future, that their leaders have stated a willingness to do that, and that October 7th happened. The reality is the country of Israel, the nation of Israel, like any other nation, cannot allow a terrorist state to be set up for its own security on its borders.
All right, so I guess this co-host is asking a simple question, which is, okay, in his mind, maybe there should have been a Palestine, but the truth is that terrorists take it over every time, and if you set it up, then it's going to become a terrorist state next door, and Israel shouldn't do that. I think that it's a nice question, it's a smart question, but it undermines subtly our claim, which is that this is our land. First and foremost, this is our land. And yeah, we don't want any terrorists inside our land or on our borders, but it's our land. In any case, let's take a look at how Dr. Sheline answers this co-host's question.
What do we do now, given that is the reality that would ensue?
Well, Hamas only exists as a result of the Israeli occupation. So if Israel actually were to move forward with the creation of a Palestinian state, or alternatively, people have talked about the possibility of a one-state solution where Palestinians have equal rights to Israelis within the same territory, which, given the ways that Israel has worked to establish settlements, to subsidize the lives of settlers, to displace Palestinians from areas that were supposed to have been their future Palestinian state as a result of the Oslo process. All of this would essentially obviate or get rid of the need for Hamas. Hamas only exists because of this frustration with Israeli occupation. Whereas if Israel actually established a state of Palestine, this would be the most secure outcome for Palestinians, who this is what they've been asking for, and for Israelis, who then would be able to deal with another sovereign country, either alongside them or, again, in some kind of one-state reality where Palestinians had equal rights. There would no longer be a basis for the terrorism, for the frustration, for the lack of rights that Israel have imposed upon the Palestinian people for decades is why you see people responding with violence. And if I could add,
well, before she adds, let's deal with this, because this is an amazing canard that Dr. Sheline lobbed up there. She threw out one of the greatest canards. The absence of a word is the giveaway. The absence of the word jihad.
Yes.
I'm
listening to her and thinking, Al-Shabaab, do they exist because of, and ISIS, Al-Qaeda? Is that all because of Israeli? How about the Islamic Republic of Iran? The fact is, how about this?
How about ISIS? How about Al-Qaeda? And how about Hamas itself? Yes. Her formula that she's positing is that the only reason that there's terrorism against Israel is because Israel doesn't give enough rights. And if there would be created either equal rights in Israel for the so-called Palestinians, or there would be a Palestinian state, it would obviate, in her words, the Hamas. Except she doesn't tell you that that's not what the Hamas says at all. It doesn't say that at all. It has a charter. That charter is like 30 pages long. It's big. I've read it. And it basically says Israel is the continuation of the Crusaders. We've defeated the Crusaders. We need to defeat Israel as well. And Israel is completely illegitimate. We are an Islamic movement. We believe in Islamic control, Islamic law. Israel and Jews are illegitimate. We are dead set on destroying Israel. It doesn't say anything about finding liberal rights. It doesn't say about equalities. It doesn't talk about the occupation. It just says get rid of the Jewish state, because the Jewish state in Muslim lands is illegitimate. Jews are an inferior people. We have Islam is the correct religion, and we got to do everything to get rid of Israel in toto. And what she's doing out there, being a Hamas apologist, is just bold-facedly, because I believe that she's smart. I do believe that she's smart. I don't believe that she doesn't know. I believe that she is bold-facedly lying. She's telling us, oh, if you just lay down your arms, give them a Palestinian state, then they would obviate Hamas, because Hamas only exists to get equal rights. You know, the people with the masks and the RPGs, the ones that rape and kill and did October 7th and photographed, children being murdered and sending those videos, live videos to their family, burning people, burning a young girl, rapes and murders of babies. They are freedom fighters. They're there for liberty. They're actually big fans of Madisonian democracy. That's what they're all about. That's what she's trying to tell us. And that is such a bold-faced lie. And the key word of what Hamas is, which is Hamas equals jihad, part of the Muslim Brotherhood, supported by Iran, that's all deleted. And instead she proffers up to us this kind of, they're just like us, and they just want freedoms and liberties, and that's what they're all about. Israel could just have a wonderful, peaceful state. And the other side that the other aspect of it she doesn't mention, it's been tried. She forgot to mention that Gaza. Go ahead. I'll let you take over that part. Go ahead.
Over and over again. Of course, Gaza, Israel withdraws, pulls out all of its Jews. That should satisfy and appease the jihadists. All the Jews are gone. Okay, what do they say? That's a victory for us. We've got a foothold now. We launch and we try to expand. Palestinian Authority.
Wait. So they got a piece of land. They got Gaza. They could control it. They turned it into a militarized
Billions of
jihadist hellhole.
dollars. Billions
my
of
God.
dollars have flowed in. More aid per capita by an enormous amount than Europe got in the Marshall Plan. And what could they have turned this land into? Oh, first thing they did was destroy the greenhouses and hothouses that were left behind by the Israeli farmers, the Jewish farmers. What could they have built? Magnificent things. Instead, you got $14 billion in the bank accounts of the top 4 Hamas leaders, and billions of dollars invested in 400 miles of underground tunnels and rockets and weapons and computer servers. And this lady talks about rights, and people have gone through Judea and Samaria, the so-called West Bank, and asked Arabs on the street, what rights are you missing? What are the rights that you need? We want to document it. What are the rights you're being denied? And the only answer they can come up with is we don't want to have to go through a checkpoint when we cross the green line. And so that's the rights they're talking about.
By the way, that is something that I want to see also. I want to see Arabs
go to the Ask Project.
I want to see Arabs living in Israel, living with freedom of movement, because there will be no jihadism. We will not have checkpoints in Israel because we won't need it. Because
if there were no terror attacks, bus bombings, shootings, you wouldn't need the checkpoints. All the checkpoints were set up, and were set up because of the Second Intifada. And then in the places where you have walls between the roads and protecting those, it's because of shooting attacks on cars going down the roads.
That's right.
So
and if we had zero tolerance for jihadism, we wouldn't need those walls. We wouldn't need those checkpoints. Jake, before we continue and finish off with Sheline, I just want to take a little break and say to people here on Yishai Fleisher TV, we believe in go big and go home. That's right. We go big and we go home. And therefore, we are coming back to the land of Israel. And if you're part of it, then subscribe to this channel. And subscribe now while you're watching. It really helps the show go up and teach a lot more people. So please join us. We believe in another thing, which is Zionism, not cynicism. Okay? Zionism, not cynicism. In Hebrew, rhymes even better. Tzionut, not tzionut. Right. Oh, no, did I misspell it? I just did that right now.
Yeah.
Oh, let's spell that right. That's good. Okay, whatever. You know it. You know what? You get out there and spell it right. You know what else here's something that's spelled right, which is fightforisrael.org. Fightforisrael.org is our effort to beautify the land of Israel, strengthen it, and send broadcast Torah out to the world. Please join us in the fight, including what we're doing here, which is dismantling the lies against Israel on the segment with Jake called The Garbage Men. Finally, buymeacoffee.com/Yishai is a great way to support the show. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jake, for joining me. Let's finish up. Yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to add a point. I was just thinking when she talks about the Palestinian goals, I've had the interesting privilege of having visited 2 museums of Palestinian history and heritage. One of them is in Washington, D.C. I was there this past November. I went through, I paid my $5. I walked the whole thing, filmed it. And it was a story of peaceful protests and, for national liberation and coexistence.
Well, there you go. That's the narrative.
The first Intifada, and Israel reacted violently to these peaceful protests. They don't mention all of the shooting, the violence, the 300 Jews killed. Okay.
Murdered,
absolutely murdered through Nazi jihad. Now I want to contrast that to the Museum of Palestinian History and Heritage, which is not put in D.C. for Westerners to see, but the one that is only for Arabs to see. It's on the southwest corner of the Temple Mount, the Jewish Temple Mount. And when you go in that place that they call the Museum of Palestinian History and Heritage, the walls have the photos of martyrs, as they call them, terrorists, murderers. That's all there is in there. Right. Because that's the heritage and that's the identity and that's the goal that they're striving for and that they brag about to themselves.
In short, it's two-facedness. It's a jihadist face and a progressive liberal face. And Dr. Sheline is an apologist. She is a person working for the cause of rebranding jihadism and instead delegitimizing Israel. The real liberal country, she's against it. But the jihadists, she's the liberal face of the jihad. Let's finish up here with Dr. Sheline.
even when Palestinians have tried to resist non-violently, Israel has responded with such massive violence that it seems that extremism is truly the only option, which is part of why you've seen recruitment for Hamas grow so significantly during.
It's not the stuff that they teach in the mosques about the Quran. It's not the fact that Jews are illegitimate and that Israel cannot exist inside of what was formerly Muslim lands, right? It's none of that. It's because they want liberties, and they figured out that the only thing they could do is be extremists to get those liberties.
Let me add also, if you want to know what Israel would look like if it was under Palestinian control, as she wishes, again, go to the Temple Mount, which Israel has allowed to be under the control of the Jordanian Muslim religious authority, the Waqf. And in that place, Jews are not allowed to wear a talit gadol. They are not allowed to carry a siddur, a prayer book. Right, a prayer shawl. They're not allowed to carry a prayer book. And up until recent months, weren't allowed to pray out loud without being detained and thrown off the mount, because the goal of the Muslim religious authority there is to say Islam has superseded you. We are dominant. You are inferior. You are a dhimmi. That's an Arabic word for Jim Crow, basically. And that's the goal, and that's what we would see. So her disingenuousness will fool people who don't know who Israel is dealing with on the other side.
That's right. That's right. And again, she deletes the word jihad from the lexicon and rebrands the jihad as a liberal movement. It's not. All right, let's finish up here. Let's finish up, Jake.
Let's move on.
The course of the war on Gaza. Antony Blinken himself acknowledged this, my former boss at the State Department, that Hamas before October 7th wasn't able to recruit nearly as many people as it is now. And we've seen, especially in the footage of Hamas releasing the Israeli hostages as part of the ceasefire agreement, even the people of Gaza themselves have been surprised to see this sort of show of strength that Hamas has demonstrated. It's stronger because of what Israel has done to it, because the takeaway has been that violence is the only answer. Whereas if Israel were to respond with actually meeting Palestinians' needs and providing them with, again, either a state or rights within Israel itself, there would no longer be any need for Hamas.
Annelle Sheline, thanks for joining us on Rising.
And that's the fairy tale that is the garbage that gets.
And you know, Jake, the jihad and the anti-Israel crew, they're smart. They tailor messages for different audiences.
Yeah.
And whoever's watching this channel is moved by these words. If Israel would only respond kindly, recognize Palestinian interests and wills, then arms would be put down and there would be no need for Hamas. You know, that is a very resonant message. If you don't know the truth, if you don't know what Hamas is, if nobody reads the charter, if these show hosts aren't like, wait a minute, lady, like what you're saying is patently not true. Here is their foundational document. You might not know it. And that's why we do what we do here on the Yishai Fleisher TV Garbage Man segment. I want to thank you very much, Jake. And there's so much more garbage out there that needs to be thrown out. But when we do these segments, it should give people strength to understand the lies, to understand the techniques of the lies. Yes. I believe that sometimes if you can make a diagnosis and understand what these people are doing, what they're trying to do and how they operate, you have a better chance of defeating them. And on the flip side, it's important to understand the delegitimization of Israel is actually a security threat. When Israel is delegitimized, then an anti-Israel American government like the Biden administration can stop the shipment of arms, and the UN can be more free to make anti-Israel Security Council resolutions, etc., and it limits Israel's ability to fight. And so it's important to understand that delegitimization is a tool in security. It's actually a military tool, even though it seems like it's only a narrative tool. In the end, it has a tremendous effect on your ability to operate in the theater of war itself.
I hope we get through to people who watch this show, The Rising, might hear what we're saying, and that we might get through to them, and that they might see that there's another side to this entire picture, that they're getting cut out of the picture when they listen to that woman give them the facts on the ground. I hope we get through to people. I hope this message gets out.
All right, folks, you are watching Yishai Fleisher TV, the Garbage Man, Jake Bennett. Thanks so much for joining me. God bless you, folks, wherever you are. Stay tuned, stay strong, stay connected, stay part of the story. Know your narrative, know your facts, know your history, and of course, be proud. Be proud of Israel, because it is a light to the world. And the garbage it's just going to have to be thrown away. God bless you folks wherever you are. Jake Bennett, thanks again, and shalom.
Thank you, Yishai. God bless.